Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a short little knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Miguron Mallory, or M Mallory as it's listed. Definitely a more interesting model from Miguron. All of their stuff is good, but a lot of it runs together. This one's got a little bit more of an interesting aesthetic, and it was a joy for me to carry, honestly. I'll link it down in the description. You guys can check it out. It comes in a few different colors, and it is not expensive. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. Overall length of the Mallory, at least that's how I'm going to pronounce it, just about 8 inches. Almost 8 inches right on the dot. Yeah, it is. It's 8 inches. Blade length is coming in legitimately over 3.5 inches, like 3.55. Cutting edge is coming in at 3 1/8, thanks to a large forward choil. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So it's a long, skinny profile without being too long and skinny. Definitely longer than something like the 80-20.5. Definitely shorter and definitely way less robust than the 80-10. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Parrot 3? Just a little bit shorter than the PM2, but it actually has almost identical amount of cutting edge there. Definitely longer than something like the Parrot 3. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue, and almost identical overall length. And then up against the Hogue Deca, similar in terms of height and I guess skinniness. This way, it's just got a longer blade. So how's the action on this guy? It's good. Miguron knows how to make a good budget knife, right? This is a simple liner lock with a detent ball. It's got a flipper tab. Detent feels pretty good. You can use this little fuller right here to reverse flick it. You kind of have to dig into it a little bit, right? But the flipper tab is going to be the primary means of deployment, and it feels pretty good, right? Light switch is fine. Your push button, you can also do it that way. The lock bar, definitely, there is a cutout here. This is a pretty hard ledge. It's not sharp, but you'll notice it disengaging it. It's kind of like the material's very pinchy into your finger. I'm really glad that they gave us a little bit of a cutout here. I appreciate that, but this isn't a knife that feels wonderful. Like if you sit and flip this like 10 times in a row and disengage it 10 times in a row, which you don't need to do that while you're using your knife normally. But if you do, you'll be like, aye, that lock bar is a little right? Also very close to double clutch. It's not, but the point where the detent ball is up on the face of the blade is right here. That flipper tab is very close to my finger, in the natural position, so only right there is the detent ball up on the face of the blade. This only matters for people who are like me and want to disengage the knife with one hand, let it come to this position where the flipper tab has contacted your finger, stopping the blade from falling down on your finger so that you can move your finger out of the way and shake the blade into the closed position. In this position, when the flipper tab is contacting your finger or stopped on your finger and the detent ball is not up all the way on the face of the blade, we call this double clutch because then it rocks back up and it doesn't want to fall because the detent ball is stopping that from happening, right? So you kind of have to mess with it, and sometimes you shake it. Oh, it's locked out again. I got to disengage it. Nobody likes to do that. So it's close, not quite double clutch. So just by the hair of its chinny chin chin. I don't know why I said that, but I guess that was what I needed to say there. Carry profile, thickness up against the Spyderco Parrot 3. It's a little thicker. We have lipped and shadow box liners, which is pretty cool, and then contoured micarta in this case, which is also cool. So I think a little bit extra thickness is excusable. I didn't find this to be overly thick. Length and height up against the PM2 and Parrot 3. Honestly, it felt like I was carrying a generic full-size knife, right? Not huge, not tiny, not heavy, right? I just felt like I was carrying a regular pocket knife. Lengthwise, it's a little longer than the Parrot 3. Height-wise, it does get that tall, especially down here. Not quite as big as something like the PM2. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description. It talks about the tools I use in this channel. Miguron likes to do T8, and that looks like we've got T8 screws all the way throughout. Yeah, all great. Awesome. Miguron, what is your guys' deal with not wanting to let left-handed people mount their clips? It wouldn't be a big deal if you made left-handed knives, but you just don't. It's like left-handed people don't exist, or the way that they prefer to carry their knives doesn't matter. Just give them 2 extra holes. What is going on? Why? I mean, did you guys have all of these designs made like 10 years ago and you're like, well, we can't go back now. We've already had the pieces made. There's no way. Like, this design had to have been manufactured very recently. Myself and many other people have been complaining about this for a bit. You've done it on a few models. I mean, you even have ambidextrous crossbar locks with no lefty mounting position. What is holding you back? Seriously. Crazy. But yeah, as far as disassembling the knife, yeah, it's really easy. You have minimal hardware. It's all T8. I mean, it's good to go, right? The only thing they're missing is a way for left-handed people to carry the knife properly. Anyways, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. So blade stock thickness is coming in at 123 thousandths. So little on the thin side. That's good. Did we weigh it? I don't think we did. Materials 14C 28N. That's fantastic. We have the contoured micarta. We have the stainless steel liners. We have a little bit of milling on the inside for weight reduction. We have a titanium pocket clip, which is nice. You don't typically see titanium pocket clips on knives at this price tier. Miguron does add that little touch, which is something that makes them a little special, and that's cool. The weight is coming in at 3.7 ounces. No surprise there. It's also not a bad weight at all. Under 4 ounces, which is, 3 to 4 ounces is pretty typical for the average pocket knife. It's also pretty well balanced. The balance point is right behind the pivot, right behind the flipper tab where you're going to grip it anyway, so it feels pretty good. Meat and potatoes time. I like how this looks. I was trying to think of like how I wanted to describe it, and it really is kind of like a modern and traditional knife that's got more modern elements. Just has more of a traditional look, I guess, with the thin fuller and this sort of sheep's foot blade. Here's another cool surprise. The blade is hollow ground, which really stands out while you're using this. This is a really nice knife to cut with. I really enjoyed it. Nothing really got hung up in this area here, but the blade is nice and thin behind the edge. It really does feel good. It's also got a nice ergonomic grip to it, whether you're in the standard grip or choked up. Here's something that I love. Most of the time when we have a choke up spot or forward choil on knives like this that are including a flipper tab, they're like, yeah, we put a forward choil in there. It's about 3/4 the width of the average human finger, so good luck not cutting yourself. God, that makes me mad. Just give us a whole freaking choil, right? They did that here. Now, I realize there are definitely people out there who have fingers that are much larger than mine, but I feel like the average person is going to have similar or thinner fingers. I have somewhat thicker hands, right? Not huge. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm a manly man, look how thick my hands are. No, I gain nothing from that. I'm trying to just give you information that you can use, right, to gauge whether or not this is going to work for you. My finger fits in here just fine. This is great. It's very rare, and it's hilarious to me. I mean, even hinder knives, like, what the heck? The only way it works is when you delete the flipper tab, which normally is what I say. This forward choil would be super comfortable if there wasn't a flipper tab. In this case, it's pretty good. That's a second knuckle choil there, and I've got plenty of room. Look at that. See that right there? That's great. So, standard grip, choked up grip, both good. Jimping probably could have been extended a little bit further. I don't know why you gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jimps. It's hard to see. Give us like 8 to 12 jimps. Just give us. Don't be don't be cheap on those. Just extend it out a little further, right? But it's fine. Ergonomically, it's great too. This pocket clip is probably just maybe a hair long. It's not bad. I can't complain about this clip. The clip is fine, right? It's a typical popsicle stick style clip that'll work with pretty much any basic design, which this definitely is. This is like a incredibly traditional knife design, right? It's just different than what Miguron usually does for a couple of reasons, but ergonomically, it doesn't really cause an issue. In the standard grip, definitely less in the choked up grip, but it just feels good. The best part of the ergonomics is the contoured micarta scales, which honestly, this blue looks great, especially with the polished liners behind it. These are lipped. The only other time I've seen them do this is on the Valona and the M Valona. That's the reason they call this the M. There must be a larger one of these, right? I guess, because they call the other one the M Valona for the medium Valona or whatever. I don't know exactly why they do that. But these are shadow boxed. I think probably the scales could have been scooted a little closer. The best type of shadow boxing is when they do it and it doesn't affect the ergonomic feeling at all. This is almost perfect. I can feel the little lipped edges. They're nicely rounded off, but I can feel them. I think it would be great if the scales almost matched just about to the ledge. That way you can see it right? Like this. You see how the light like highlights it? This looks, oh, excuse me, I have spit on this knife right in the middle of a knife review. Gosh, that never happens. I'll have to make sure and edit that out, right? I probably won't. But yeah, it does highlight it really nicely. I enjoy that aesthetically, and you don't really notice it. I mean, kind of. I think they could have been a little closer to the edge, but no big deal. 14C28N, you'll often hear that that's the very best steel that you can find in the knife world. Depending on what you consider the best elements, that may or may not be true. 14C28N definitely has the most preferred balance on average. If you ask like your average budget knife enthusiast, who's going to go out and use their knives, right? It will not win awards in terms of edge retention. If you are looking for the best edge retention you can get at this $50 territory, honestly, it's probably properly heat-treated D2. You can definitely find better steels in some cases, but the question is it heat-treated properly? And the answer most of the time is probably not, if it's something that seems too good to be true. So ultimately, you're getting a piece of steel that's printed as whatever specialty steel that's not heat-treated properly, so it doesn't perform like it's supposed to. So honestly, D2, if you're looking for edge retention, if it's properly heat treated, will blow 14C28N out of the water. The reason 14C28N is so popular is because the balance is very, very good for a knife that's probably going to be beat on. 14C28N has okay edge retention, pretty good stainless properties, and it's super tough and super easy to sharpen. Those are elements that you want. Combined with something like this, that's kind of a hollow ground sheepsfoot, I think that's about perfect. You can use this thing, it'll cut and cut and cut, and when it finally does go dull, which it will, right? You probably won't have to deal with any chips because it's a very tough steel, it'll probably roll. Sharpening it back up will be incredibly easy. This is why people like 14C28N, and it is super appropriate on this knife. Absolutely. Miguron does a great job with symmetry and the edge bevel and all that. So all of this is going to be perfect. You're not going to have any wonkiness there. Just feels really, really good. Same way with fit and finish all the way around. There's no lanyard hole. There's usually not on these knives. This has an elongated bill, so you're going to have to fight it a little bit depending on how thick your pocket seam is, but not much of a problem. Riding on micarta, a little bit of friction there, not too bad. In and out of the pocket's fine. Really wish you gave us an option, or lefties an option, to mount the clip the way that they want to, but they didn't, so whatever. You have a stop pin that's located in its traditional position. No shouldering, but no big deal. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick. No double clutch. Very close, but no double clutch. No pivot lash. Nice and smooth. And here this does run on bearings, but you probably guessed that. Nice detent. And are we perfectly centered? We are actually slightly off to the right. This can probably be fixed by loosening up the pivot and the body screws, taking a piece of paper and wedging it to the opposite side, and then tightening everything back down, taking the piece of paper out, and then loosening the pivot so that the action goes back to the way you want. This is usually how you fix centering. Normally, I don't have an issue with centering on Miguron knives, so this is kind of a goofy one, right? Could be the result of me flipping it over and over again. Probably something you can easily fix, but truthfully, we should expect all of our knives to come from the factory perfectly centered. It's 2024. Most of them do. If your blade is off-centered, it's probably not a reason to send it back unless you have lockup issues or there's some sort of grittiness in the action. Try the recentering trick if yours is like mine, and if that doesn't work and there seems to be an issue with it, or especially if the blade is rubbing, then I would send it back. But outside of that, I wouldn't. This is a cool knife. It's not anything new, right? It just looks neat, and it's a little bit different than what Miguron usually does, which is definitely worth some points because, man, a lot of their stuff looks the same. I mean, like, really the same. Miguron's one of those companies that's very attractive to newer people because you can pretty much just blindfold yourself and buy something that's right around the $50 price point, which, by the way, it's like $55, $56. And it's a great price. That's a great price for this. But if you're newer and you're like, where do I start? You could start with Miguron, blindfold yourself, and literally buy any of their products right around the $50 price point, and you would get a pretty good knife. And that is extreme. I mean, like, that statement is super accurate. You're probably going to get a good utilitarian handle profile. You're going to get a good blade material, right? You're going to get just a good classic pocket knife design all the way around. Their premium stuff, same thing. You're going to get a good knife. I mean, they do a couple of weird overbuilt knives, but outside of that, they're all very, very similar. This while looking incredibly basic, is actually a little bit of a departure from what they usually do. So Miguron, I would like to see you guys do some wacky stuff every now and then, but stay true to your typical, your straightforward utilitarian stuff. You are good to go with Miguron in pretty much any price tier. I think their best work is in the budget space, and that's definitely where this is. This is a good pocket knife in general. It's a recommendable pocket knife in general to like the average person. And it's also a cheap knife that I like. So it's going to go on my recommended knives playlist, and it's also going to go on my cheap knives I like playlist because it's just good. I told myself this was going to be a short video, and I guess I lied to myself because it's still over 15 minutes. But anyways, this is a good knife. Good to go. Hey, Miguron, seriously, left-handed people exist. Like, come on, let's get those screw holes in there. Find a way to do that for lefties. Outside of that, pretty good knife. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.